So here's the funny thing. So, the Prices, Scott and Delana are in our life group.
Yes.
And so we were going around the room kind of introducing everybody and having our talk and stuff. And we said that, Chris and Sarah are kind of known as the fun couple, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I said, but they are very close, though. They are on your guys' tail. So,
they told us that, and we were like,
did they? Yeah, you're like,
no.
We got to
stop coming over. Stop coming over.
We got to jump it up, right? Like, look, y'all stay in y'all's corner, we'll stay in our corner.
That's right.
No, the fun couple, we need to band together. That's what it is.
Right.
Right. More fun for everybody.
Increase the fun, right?
That's right.
Yeah, increase
That's right.
the fun.
It's that's why I think we enjoy hanging out with them so much, is because it's always, you never know what we're going to start talking about. Like, it's just,
Yeah, we do talk about that.
We talk about all kinds of stuff, man.
All kinds of stuff.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Cornerstone Family Talk podcast, a conversation designed to help people grow deep and live tall. There's no better place for people to grow than in a family. So welcome to the family. You'll find out very quickly that this is a compilation podcast. One episode you may hear an interview. The next may be a story or a testimony, or we may be diving deep into theology or church leadership. So welcome to Family Talk. Let's get started. So since we brought them up, let's talk about that a little bit. We've been talking about it a little bit before we started. So just about your relationship with your neighbors and how that has kind of evolved and what kind of has transpired through those relationships. Talk about that a little bit here. Because it's a neat relationship that you guys have with your neighbors there.
Yeah. I mean, it was rough going for a little bit.
Yeah.
But there were some struggles in there. But I do think that God had a purpose in putting them in our lives now.
Yeah, I think with that, I've seen a transformation. Just I say man to man between me and Scott, or even like between Sarah and Lena. They go their way. Me and Scott kind of do our thing, but then at the same time, we all kind of come together as almost as a family unit. Yeah. So it's to us. I think it's more than just neighbors. I think it is family. It's family that we've chosen.
Yeah, because I can even say with Lena personally that it's a sisterhood.
Sure.
It's developed into a sisterhood. I didn't know that I needed her. She didn't know that she needed me.
Yeah.
And it just happened.
So one of those little fun facts we were talking about earlier that I have in my head, a lot of people say they have those sayings, blood is thicker than water. But that's not the whole saying. A lot of people don't know that. But the whole saying actually is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. And it's those bonds that we've chosen can be stronger than say, bonds we were born into. And I think, through the years and through the struggles too, we all kind of have some common ground, say, between me and Scott and Sarah and Lena. We have some common ground that we relate to on a personal level with some struggles and some hardships, and then we can kind of look back now and laugh.
Well, and we're able to, connect even with our children. I have younger kids; they have older kids, so we can have, we sit and have conversations about our kids, and she's got Alyssa, which is she's still in kind of the teenager type, and I feel like it wasn't long ago that I was 19, but it was. So I can, her and I can kind of develop that relationship with each other too, where we can kind of help in ways that other people haven't been able to.
Right. You can speak into her life in ways that maybe her mom can't.
Right.
Because you're not her mom.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, which is very helpful.
Outside.
Yeah, because it's a safety. It's a safety thing. I've actually heard her say that.
Yeah.
That she feels safe. And that's something that I think I've always wanted to have where we are, where we live, out where we are, is that I want people to be able to come to the Richards house and say, it's safe here.
Yeah.
We feel safe
Yeah,
to share or be who we are, or, there's no judgment. There's no, if you want us to pray for you, we'll pray for you. If you just want to sit and talk about, I don't know, whatever you want to talk about, we're there.
That's right.
That's what we've always wanted.
Yeah.
Out there, and we're getting there.
We're getting there. We're getting there. Well, even
We're getting
you know, there's been knockout dragouts out there.
Oh,
You know, it's not all sunshine and rainbows for sure. You know, sometimes things get heated or whatever on different levels, and you know, but it will always be a place that you can come to and kind of
A haven.
be able to get away, to step away, to say, all right, let me cool my jets for a second. You know.
And there's 12 acres to just go and like,
between
get away from each other, you know?
Well, not just 12 acres, because between
all of us,
there's between Scott, Lena, and all of us, there's
32.
Well, we got to include the new additions up there that are building us. 48 acres out there. We just that we can just kind of get away, and you know, there's space enough out there to where everybody can find their corner if need be. But I think the important part is, and where God's moving us through is, I think, it is that nexus almost, that center point to where say, hey, you know.
Yeah, because everybody does gather where we are.
Yeah, and you guys gather around a meal typically.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit.
Oh, man.
Well, we like to eat.
Yes, we do.
We like to eat.
We do like to eat a multitude of things.
It's funny because we got a flat top griddle, I guess a couple years ago.
Yeah,
a couple years ago, and
I got that for my birthday.
Yeah, well, it was birthday. Yeah, was it birthday, Christmas? One of them.
One of them.
Yeah. So, I by no means was a cook, a chef.
No,
really,
no culinary skills.
Oh, I cooked all the time.
Yeah. And we got the Blackstone, and I was like, all right, I kind of like this.
Chris just turned into a chef.
The next thing you know, it's like every weekend. But then we started getting the neighbors over, and
does the skills come with the grill? Is that
must be what it is?
Yeah,
what it is.
All right,
apparently,
I need the name of that. What you got there?
Okay, well, we'll
talk later.
36-inch
griddle.
That's right. Well, we got over there when the prices started coming over, and you know, me and Scott would just hang out on the front porch, and I'd be doing my thing. I think it inspired Scott. He's got a Blackstone
now, yeah.
But it just kind of evolved into this thing where, all right, man, let's try this next time, or let's try this. So it wasn't just you know, we were cooking and having. It was like, all right, let's try some. Wonder what this would be like. You know, just the experimentation and the fun of it.
We explore a lot of different.
And then it's developed.
Flavors.
Now I got a good smoker out there, and we're just. It doesn't matter even if it's not anything crazy, just some soup on the stove or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
but something around that meal, that conversation,
that's right.
and the relationships that build.
That's right.
That's special.
Lots of laughter.
Well, and then there's also the silence when everybody's, you know, shoving their face, and they're like, what do y'all think, guys? Well, you ain't heard nobody say nothing, so it must be good. They're too busy putting the spoon to the mouth, so to speak.
That's awesome, man.
It's one of the fun things that I think that we look forward to. It started out like, hey, y'all come over, let's hang out on a Friday or Saturday, and it's just turned into a tradition to where, and we realize the importance of it, to say, hey, this is your time for fellowship, and the conversation that we'll strike up on a serious note is, you know, of what God is doing in our lives, how God's moving in our lives, and there's a rawness in that too, to where, like I said, when we're eating, our guards are let down, so to speak, and you can you feel comfortable enough to say, hey, you know, I'm struggling with this, man, you know, and by no means do we have it figured out all the way. You know, we have our own struggles, you know, and we will continue to have struggles, but I can say with 100% certainty that God is moving in all of our lives that are involved, and that's you know.
Yeah, because it just started, you know, it was the neighbors and us, and then we have our other neighbors that will come.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and then like my family will show up. So I mean, there's been times where we've had 20 plus people at our house because that's just how it ended up.
Well, any given day, you're like, man, how are we gonna feed all these people? But you know, one thing about it, God's always provided a meal for us.
That's true.
We've never had a weekend where we're like, man, I'm so my stomach's talking
so
in my
hungry.
backbone. I'm hungry. So, you know, I think
Awesome.
we're really blessed in that department
We are.
as well.
That's good. All right, so let's talk about, you mentioned some struggles here as we're wrapping up this part of the conversation. So let's talk about how you guys came to faith in Christ and some of the struggles you had in that process. Let's cover some of those. So how did you guys come to faith in Jesus?
You go first.
Well, I've grown up in church, and it's always been that, you know, drag me by my ear coming out on Sunday morning. Are you going to church, boy? You know, and I listened as a kid. You know, I knew who Jesus was. You know, I've read the Bible, but that's where, as I got older and through some struggles of my own, building a house and then struggling with addiction, you can know in your head who Jesus is, but through that dark spot that I was in, having that heart knowledge of who Jesus is, and really just getting, when there's nobody else around, through the addiction and what comes of that, when it's just you in the house and there's nobody else around you, your family's, you've pushed everybody out and pushed everybody away, and you get down on your knees and then how do I put it? You don't do anything. You don't have anything left but to invite Jesus in, to say, hey, God, help me. This is where I'm at. Through my own understanding and my own actions and my failings, I have pushed everybody away. And then just to turn it around, and that whole idea of repentance, turning that 180 and not looking back, or trying to not look back. Life started coming back together for me, and
so you got to a really low point with the addiction. It was just messing up your life.
It was ruining my life. It was destroying everything. I was building a house from the ground up, trying to start a family, trying to live my life as an adult. I found a great woman, and things I took for granted through that addiction because I was blind to it. The proverbial wool had been pulled over my eyes, and I was doing my best to pull wool over everybody else's eyes around me through the lies and the deceit.
What was the final thing that made you turn the corner? What was it?
I got caught in a lie. I got caught in a lie. And then
that was a tough time.
With you?
Yeah. Sarah caught me in a lie.
What happened?
Yeah, that was a tough time.
Yeah.
Julian was a baby. And there were just some things that weren't adding up for me. It all seemed strange. He would go off and spend some time with these people that I just kind of was like, but he was a grown man, I just but some of it wasn't adding up, and then some of the pieces started falling into place, and I was like, okay, something's up, something's not. Because I was oblivious to, I guess you could, like his actions of, with the addiction, the actions that came with the addictions. I was oblivious, just completely naive to all of it. And then I started noticing some things, and I was like, no, this is definitely not right. And then I confronted him about it, and then there was nothing he could do at that point as far as denial, because the subject hadn't been brought up before. And then I brought the subject up, and he was like, oh. Yeah. Oh, no.
She knows.
Right. She knows, exactly.
All right, back to that proverbial corner, so to speak.
Yeah. And then I left.
Yeah.
I took Julian,
3 or 4 months.
I moved back in with my parents because I was like, I'm not, he's already been exposed to enough. I've already been exposed to enough. And, like I said, I was so oblivious to, and I beat myself up for a long time too, because I was like, I allowed myself to be so blinded by my love for him that I just let whatever, it's okay. It'll be okay. Because I had been through a lot before I met him. And then, I moved back in with my parents with Julian, and then, like he said, he was by himself. It hit rock bottom.
Well, so we were engaged.
Yeah.
So when she left, she threw the ring
back
in my face, and and took my only son, and she left. So I'm in this brand new house that I spent way too much money on, and hindsight's 20/20. My addiction was kind of fueling some of that misspending and kind of getting carried away on certain things that really didn't matter. But yeah, I'm in this big house by myself. The crib's empty, bedroom's empty, it's cold.
Yeah.
And I just finally hit the ground and said, something's got to give. I can't do this on my own anymore, you know. And I grew up surrounded by those kind of things, you know. My father has suffered with substance abuse and alcoholism and negligence, and you know, as long as I've known him. My mother passed when I was real young, and she's no longer here. She's up there with Jesus, but she was no saint here on earth either. You know, she had her own struggles. So I had a choice to make right there. It was either I can keep going down the path I was going to say, hey, you know, you're going to wind up just like this thing you've been trying to run from, or you can buck up, get your act together, and you can go down a different path. And that's when I gave it to God. I gave it to God right there. I said, look, I can't do this on my own. I knew who he was. I knew what he could do in people's lives. But experiencing it then right there in rock bottom, there's no other feeling like it. And it was a struggle in those few months that she wasn't there. You know, I totally broke that trust and tore down those bonds that we had made. But I was going to do everything in my own power, with every bit of it going to God's grace and mercy, to say, hey, I was going to try to rebuild my life and rebuild that trust.
When did you get to the point where you're like, I'm ready to come back and he's changed? And what did that look like for you?
Well, the thing is I really didn't want to leave. But at that point, I didn't feel like I had a choice, because if I would have stayed, I don't know if he would have made the changes that needed to be made.
Yeah.
So I, rattled the cage.
Yep.
I guess you could.
Yeah,
you
I think
could
you did
say. Good. But no, I did. That's the crazy thing about it is when I met Chris, I knew he was the man I was going to be with for the rest of my life. I knew it, and it didn't matter what came our way. I was like, we're going to work through it. We're going to work through it. And I've told a few people that, and they're kind of like, what? What do you mean? Like, what? How did you know? I just knew. I knew when I met him that he was going to be the father of my children. I wasn't supposed to have children.
Really?
No.
Wow.
No, I grew up with doctors telling me that if I did ever want children, that I would have to go through other steps, IVF, fertility treatments and stuff like that. But God said differently. And like I said, there was something about him. I knew. And we had met, and I was actually in another relationship at the time when we first met. And creepy over here got my name off my debit card.
I was working at the gas station.
He was working at Wayne's World.
She'd come through Wayne's World. And,
yeah. And he was like...
She had this big old truck, and I was like,
yeah.
she's something.
He was like fighting people to get to the window. Like, move, get out of the way.
Get out of the way, that's right.
And he handed me my card back, and he said, "You have a good day, Mr. Roberts." And I was like...
Creep.
Bye. Drove off or whatever. And then it was what, years? 2 years, 3 years?
2 or 3 years.
It was 2 or 3 years after that I saw him again, and I was single, and
Probably about 2 years.
Yeah, it was about 2 years.
Yeah.
And like I said, I just knew, even with the struggles that we had in the beginning of our relationship, and the things that we went through, I just knew that God had given me this man to start a family with and have a life with. And I think during his addiction and all that, I still knew. So there was a part of me that didn't want to leave because I wanted to help him through it, but I wasn't going to be able to. And that's where I just had to accept that he was going to have him and God were going to have to get through that part together. And then, you went to
I went to a program.
He went to a program
Down in
right
Albany.
after.
Yeah, right after. Well, and it was that ultimatum, like, hey man, you got to help yourself. You got to do something to show me that you're trying to do better. And I was working. I was full-time employed. And I went down there for a little while, and I got on some medicines and kind of got the hormone levels right in my head. You know what I'm saying? So, kind of brought me back to baseline, so to speak. And
yeah, it wasn't until after that I came
that's
home.
right.
And even after I came home, it was still very, very difficult. The trust was broken. To lie about something that big was very difficult for me to get over, but we did.
That's right.
We did, and it wouldn't have been possible without God's help. Because,
yeah, these days honesty is the best policy. Sometimes I'm honest to a fault now. I'd rather tell you something that might potentially maybe hurt your feelings and be honest about it instead of trying to protect you with a lie.
There was definitely a shift in that in a big way. It was almost like a smack in the face, and he just it was like a whoop, and he flipped, and then he got like really honest, and I was like, oh, wow, I was not ready for all of that, but okay, thank you. So yeah, it went from having some dishonesty to all the honesty, and I was just like, hold on, let me brace myself.
Right.
Yeah, but
Well, you went to North Carolina too.
oh yeah. I was raised in North Carolina, and moved down here when I was 12. It was 8th grade, and I grew up in mountain churches. The mountain church. I like to call them hellfire brimstone.
Oh yeah.
Churches. So the faith was always the center of our household, but I think some of what I struggled with when I was younger was my parents divorced, and then my mom and my stepdad got together, and so I saw their faith, but it didn't shift their lives a whole lot, if that makes sense. Like they kind of just kept going through the motions. So when I hit adulthood, it seemed like I was just going through the motions. I am a Christian, I'm saved, but I'm just gonna coast. I'm just gonna fly through, and the obedience is what I think I really eventually was like, okay, that's a big key to the faith, is being obedient. And sometimes it's gentle, and sometimes it's not. But I have learned that through the obedience, God truly makes moves. Big moves. Big, massive moves.
Big moves in you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Night of Worship was one of those, because I wasn't going to be obedient. I was just going to stand there.
Yeah. So explain that for everybody who's listening.
Yeah, no, it was, we were standing there, and you had mentioned, physical pain, and I had been dealing with neck pain since I was a teenager. I was diagnosed when I was 18 with cervical lordosis, which is loss of curvature in the neck.
Really?
So instead of the beautiful C shape of the neck, mine was straight and starting to bow the other way. So I had dealt with that pain for quite some time. I went to chiropractors and stuff like that. And then, you mentioned neck pain specifically, and I literally, my head went to Chris. What?
Yeah.
No way. And so I raised my hand like this, and Chris was like, no, put your hand up. And I was like, okay. So I put my hand all the way up, and then it was then that it happened. It was the obedience. When because God was telling me, to get, to get the prayer, but it was then when I raised my hand, that was the obedience. I think is what truly healed me.
Right. Yeah, responding to that in obedience.
Responding to that obedience was truly what, and meaning it.
Yeah.
You know, it was a cry out. You know, so.
Well, I think the outpour of prayer from those that were around us in the community around us, you know, I would never dismiss that, because there was such a genuineness to that. But I think God said as soon as she raised her hand, she felt that warm, she said.
I still feel it.
You know,
it's strange.
Yeah.
You know, where there was pain, there's now warmth.
Yeah.
It's just a steady warmth there. That's now.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
But my thought, and I've thought about it a lot, was God speaking to Kevin about the specific need? And I've thought about that. God was speaking to you. He knew, he put on you, there's a need in here. He didn't know who the need was. He just knew that specific neck pain need. And then she was raising her hand, prophetic. And it was just a powerful thing that night. And
you know, even that night, I think I remember you saying, you know, when I had gotten baptized, you had said that night at night of worship that it was a prophetic thing over not only me but our lives. And there has been a shift, even just in those, I wouldn't even say small acts, those are big acts, but there's been a shift in our family, in our dynamic, just instant.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, and there's still challenges, you know.
Absolutely.
We've got our personal challenges.
We're human.
For sure, you know, and I wish that I personally could say I handle every situation with grace. I don't.
Yeah, me neither.
Right. But, you know, I've gone through a career, you know, a job change that I'm really happy about.
That was God too, though.
100%.
Because
100%.
That was also in that time.
Right.
It was.
And it was like, whoa, what's happening? You know, it was a whirlwind of all these things, all these blessings that were just, and I think we were both just like, wow.
Well, and I think a lot of times, you know, and through life we receive those blessings, and you just mindlessly go through
That's
it,
true.
right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, cool, you know, appreciate that, you know, Big Papa, you know what I'm saying? So, but this time I think as far as the paradigm shift, and that paradigm meaning that mindset, and especially with the life groups we're going through now, you know, winning the war in your mind, is that paradigm shift to say, hey, instead of just taking it and running, why don't we take it, be obedient, and see what God wants us to give back?
Exactly.
You know, and I think that's very important to say, all right, we're not just going to take it at face value anymore. We're not just going to take it off the top. Like, you know, we've been blessed. How can we bless somebody else or be a blessing to somebody else? You know, and being obedient in that. And
that's awesome.
I had a good friend of mine, you know, he always teased me and he called me Jonah because I was the master of disobedience, you know.
Running in the opposite direction.
Yes.
Like I know, I hear you, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to dip.
Yep.
I'm going to go this way. And
Appreciate you.
I've seen a lot of strife come from that, you know, you know, a lot of fall down and pick yourself up, you know, back up kind of things. But
well, because you live in the flesh, you know, and once you kind of strip that down, it opens up.
Yeah, it is amazing. Yeah. So here's what I like in it too. So I've started running over the last 6 months to a year, and I feel like when I start running, like my whole body is screaming at me, "Stop!"
Right.
You're like, "Stop!" My whole body is like, "Stop doing what you're doing." You know, and if I listen to it, then I stop running.
Yeah.
But if I don't listen to it and I keep running, eventually it stops yelling at me.
That's right.
Everything goes numb pretty much.
That's what it is.
Right, yeah. But I feel like if you can push through that, your flesh will tell you not to do what God's telling you to do.
Yeah.
If you push through that, eventually your flesh kind of shuts up and they
That's
go, okay,
true.
you're going to do what God told you to do. You're going to keep running. Okay.
That's
and it's
right.
funny how that your body does that. It doesn't want to be obedient.
It doesn't want
But you
to be
can push
obedient.
through it and it'll stop screaming eventually. But
Eventually.
it'll scream at first because it doesn't like doing what God wants you to do.
Sure, because it's, you know, I think as people, I think that's what we're hardwired to do, unfortunately, is kind of be in that flesh and kind of listening to what the world says,
Right.
you know. And the challenge is to be a Christian, you know. And if anybody says, "Oh, well, you know, you're a Christian, you got it all figured out," no, brother.
Oh,
It's quite the opposite.
it is
You
quite
know,
the
I think we
opposite.
have more challenges as Christians to say, "Hey, we're called to live to a standard that's not of this world," and the world's going to scream and try to pull you down. Like you said, your body's screaming at you, say, "Hey, man, this ain't cool. Stop!" But you know, once you push through that and say, "Hey," and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt, and you're going to have some really big moments to where you're going to have nothing but depending on God. You know.
And we've had several moments where it's been, you know, low,
Yeah.
and he just, I like to picture him just reaching down and scooping us up.
That's right. That's right.
You know,
Yep.
I've always, and most of the time, even when I feel anxious or anything like that, I picture just a hug, and that's what it that's what it feels like to me.
Right.
Is it feels like a hug.
So true.
Yeah, so just a
That's
big
awesome.
warm hug.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I tell you, we've seen you guys grow tremendously over the years that you guys have been here with us. Then, of course, I don't remember the date of when you got baptized. When was
Oh
that?
my
Do you remember?
gosh, I don't either.
Sometimes I'm terrible with days.
I
so,
know,
like,
I'm bad
don't know
with
when that
days
is.
too. It was, let's see, what, it's February now.
Yeah. Was it near the end of last year? November, December-ish? Was it? Did we do it then?
Hang on a second.
I want to say it was
You got-
December. Yeah, because the Christmas stuff.
Oh,
we
it
had
was up.
I think we had the Christmas
Okay,
stuff up.
okay, so
I want
yeah.
to say it was December.
So you got baptized, and as I was baptizing you, I was praying for you, and I started praying that this event was going to mark your life, and not
Yes.
just your life, but your whole family's life,
Yes.
like setting you on a course in a direction like never before. And that's what you guys have seen happening over the last couple months is
Exactly.
really God just kind of propelling you guys forward as you've been walking through and being obedient. And I love that. You know, you guys made the choice, start following, you know, to hit rock bottom and say, we're going to start following you. And God keeps growing you and growing you. And then sometimes he puts that super on our natural, you know, and he goes, I'm going to give you an extra boost here and take you even further than
That's right.
what you're going. It's just amazing to see God
That's
work
right.
like that in our lives.
Well, I think 5 or 6 years we've been coming here now, and I think every year's been a. All right, what else can we do? You know, how else can we serve? What else can we? You know, what role can we kind of fill for this church, for this community? And I think I've said to you before, Kevin, is that I think is the most important part to us is this community, this loving community that we call home. You know, you can see the brick and mortar side of Cornerstone Church, but
Right.
this church is its people and what God's doing through this people.
Right.
And the bonds that we've made through
Yeah.
this church,
That's true.
and just the different walks of life that come through, you know, those are all inspirations to I know me personally. We have good conversations after church on the way home, like,
Oh, yeah.
man, blah blah blah, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's the fun part. That's the fulfilling part. Is just being able to give that time up and say, hey, you know, what else were we gonna
Yeah.
do?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Well, we've had those mornings where the enemy's like, nah,
Sure.
just sleep in.
I ain't gonna lie,
You'll be all
there's been
right.
a couple mornings I'm like, all right, I just
You
need
know,
to for a few more hours.
but then we go, and then it's, you know, we're looking at each other in the car after, going, oh, well,
well, I think
Why were we even thinking we shouldn't go?
why
right?
were we, you know, and it's always something that we've needed.
Yeah.
You know, you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
You don't even realize that you've needed it, and then you know you step inside the doors, and you know you get surrounded by people, you know, saying good morning, and you know, and then there's always something. There's always something that was needed,
Yeah.
and we walk out of here with it.
I heard. I think I
That's
heard
awesome.
Paul Shiflett say at the men's conference was, you know, there's those mornings where the devil's working on you,
Right.
you know, on Sundays, you know, and it's not about us though.
No.
You know, we can selfishly, well, all right, I need a couple hours, or I don't really feel like it today, but don't do it for ourselves. Do it for God. How, you know, if that Sunday that we miss, or we just stay home because, you know, we
What
got that
would we have
line in our
missed?
head, what blessing did you miss out that God was
Exactly.
intended on giving you? And we've seen that
Multiple.
100-fold, you know. But that's not about us. We're not coming to church for us. We're coming to church to worship God.
Yeah.
You know, and to listen to the message, and there's been some mornings, Kevin, that I'm just like, yep,
Yep, that was me.
That was for me, man.
That was for me, man.
If I stayed home, I wouldn't have seen that.
Even the night of worship.
Oh man, yeah.
The night of worship, I was just like, man, my neck was hurting. I didn't feel, it was, and it would go into my head. I'd get headaches and stuff all the time. And then, we came that night, and I was just like, well, that's why we were supposed to go.
That's
like
right.
that, we're here for a reason.
That's right.
And sometimes the God will push us, and like you said, propel in the direction that we need to be pushed into.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So let me ask you a question here.
Okay.
Let's say somebody's watching here today and maybe struggling with addiction, struggling with being truthful and honest. What advice would you guys give to them?
Ooh.
I would say that you have to want to, and I think that's the key part of the whole thing is you can't, just like salvation, you can't force it on anybody.
Right.
They have to freely take it. It's a free gift. Jesus died on the cross for all of us, but you have to freely take it. But you have to want it, but you also have to follow through with it. But I would say the biggest piece of advice if you're struggling with addiction or if conviction's kind of tearing you up is don't be scared to get uncomfortable, because that's where Jesus is. Jesus is in the wilderness. He's looking for that.
He's in the mess, isn't he?
He's in there. He's in that mess. That's exactly where he's at. You're not going to find him in that comfortable numb spot you are in the corner over here. If you really want it, you've got to get out of that shell.
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to get out and say, face your mess and say that's where Jesus is. And it's when you face that mess you'll find him.
Yeah.
Because he's there.
Yeah.
He's always there.
Yep.
He's been there the whole time. And that's scary for people to face their own mess.
It is.
But I think the beautiful part about it is that you're not facing it alone. There's a fourth man in that fire, and
Ooh, you better preach.
He's been there the whole time. it's look, I'm getting goosebumps right now. I seen something. It was, God never promised it wasn't going to rain on you, but He can give you an umbrella so you can stand in it.
That's right.
He's never promised us that it wasn't going to be easy, but He did say He was going to be there. So don't be. You can talk about accountability partners or this or that. I think that's important, but sometimes there's a hesitancy there because you think somebody's not going to understand. But Jesus gets it, and I understand it can kind of feel otherworldly or sometimes ethereal to hear that, just because
You're like, is this even real?
right, right, But I think if there's somebody out there listening right now, He's real, and I would just stress that He's real. He's there, and you just got to be able to get uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, and there's been so many moves in our lives personally that there's no way that we could say He's not.
Right.
And I'll say from somebody that loves somebody with addiction is patience. Patience is key, because there's a root and there's a reason why people struggle with addiction. And sometimes getting to that root can be uncomfortable for the person supporting, because maybe you're part of that root, and you don't know that yet. But yeah, you have to be able to support and also, hold them accountable. And that's actually been probably one of the most difficult things that we have dealt with, and have had some of the biggest arguments in our relationship have been, where I've kind of said, all right, enough's enough, and he's kind of been like, nah, it's never enough,
Just a little bit more.
just a little bit more. And I struggle with addiction myself. It may not have been, some of the extreme lengths that maybe he had went to. But even now, I still struggle with addiction, and so does he. We both do. It's never just cut and dry. It's something that's always there. But I think if you do get to the root and you just, start digging that root up and yanking it around, I believe that God reaches down and says, let me help you. Let me help you pull that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where we're at is that communication line's open now.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas before it wasn't, but now if we've got a problem, no matter what it is, but we always find time, even if it's just 20 minutes, just to sit down and just kind of hash some stuff out. Let's mull it over. Let's talk about it. Give it a good consideration, and then
I like to call it check-ins.
Right, little check-ins, right?
Yeah.
But then,
Babe, I'm checking in. You good?
Well, we might go to our separate corners, but and I know. But at the end of the day, we do that, and I think that's very important.
We do. And that's where I think that's where our relationship has, developed in line with the Holy Spirit, is because what started as a friendship and a, just a random relationship, because it was absolutely random, just felt, blossomed into, a marriage, but not just a marriage, not just a spousal relationship, but this dude is my best friend. Like, he gets all the tea, we talk about everything. And I think if we wouldn't have gone through what we did go through with, his addiction and me stepping out and then coming back, and if we wouldn't have gone through that, we would not have the friendship that we have now. There's no way.
That's right.
There's no way. It would not have happened, and we wouldn't be where we are in our relationship with each other and our relationships with the people around us without that bad spot, without that dark spot.
Yeah.
So on the other side of that, there are better things.
Yeah, strength, safety, security.
That's it.
That's right.
A closeness that wouldn't have been there.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's good, yeah. That's one of the things I love about your story is that, everything was hiding under secret. As soon as the lie came out and got exposed, that you made a great step. You pulled back, which drew out your want to.
That's right.
I think you're exactly right. If you would have stayed, he wouldn't have changed.
No, he wouldn't have.
But you backing up motivated him to say, I'm going to lose everything here. And that pulled out the want to out of you. You started making the right move, bringing you guys back together, building this relationship, rebuilding the relationship. Yeah, it's just such a great story.
On solid foundation.
Yeah, on the right
solid
foundation.
Whereas
foundation.
before it was...
Because he had to repropose to me, because I was like, no.
Yeah, I did. And I did, and she said yes. But, definitely that solid rock, and I think that's important. And that's where our kids are at now is we want them built on that rock.
Yep.
And they, it might be years where they have their own questions or whatever, but that foundation is laid. I hope, I pray.
Yeah.
That's the goal of us as parents. But.
That's right. That's right.
Definitely think that Julian, because he's the oldest, Sawyer didn't come along until later, but Julian, I think Julian sees the strength as a 6-year-old little boy. I think he sees the strength that has developed in our relationship, because he's, he was right there in it.
Yeah.
Right there in all of that. And, he may have been a baby, he may have been toddler, but I think he's maybe even seen.
Yeah.
Because now he knows he can't. He can't wiggle in.
Like kids do. They find that chink. Like, all right.
Yeah.
Divide and conquer.
Well,
Exactly.
Well,
Now
Mama
he's like,
no room.
he's like, I'm just not even gonna do it. Just not
That's
even gonna
great.
do it. It's not
That's
worth
awesome.
it. They're too strong now. I can't do it. They're unified.
They're too powerful.
They're too powerful together.
That's right. I can just hear him saying that now. Yeah.
That's funny. That's good. I've enjoyed the conversation, man. It's been good to.
It's been good. We
kinda,
appreciate the time.
Yeah, mull over your life and give us the high points and some of the low points and
That's
how
right.
God has worked through those. So appreciate your time today.
Yes,
sir.
absolutely.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Family Talk. You can stay up to date on our family conversations by subscribing. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or on TikTok. All those links can be found in the show notes. You can also hit the share button and share this episode on social or with someone that you love. And finally, dropping a rating and telling us what you think of this episode will help spread our conversations. Thank you for being a part of our family here at Family Talk. We'll see you next time.